Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear someone saying, hello, can you hear me?
Is this the...
Oh, is
she on her cell?
What are you doing? Gav, is your light on? Gav, no. Oh. Somebody just on speaker?
No.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Okay.
I can.
We can hear you.
Oh, now I can hear you. Okay. Great.
Many people are muted.
Okay. Join with computer audio. Sorry guys, I'm trying to get my video to work. Ah, here we go. Start video. There I am. Okay. Okay, wait. Somebody turn off their mute so that I can see if I can hear you. Okay?
I have turned off my mute.
Okay, wonderful. Okay.
I'm now going to remute.
Okay. Wait, actually, can I ask all you guys to not be on mute?
You are now on mute.
Okay.
Let's try this. Did you guys get the, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So I wanted to ask you guys, if possible, to take yourselves off mute unless you have a whole bunch of noise in the background, because it's just really hard to give a shir as a total monologue. Really used to, you know, interaction with my students. Oh, look, I can see some of you. Hey guys, how are you doing?
What people can do is be on mute, but if they want to say something, you press the space button, the space bar, and that temporarily unmutes you till you let go of it. So if one wanted to interject something, they could press the space bar without having you hear their household.
Okay. Yeah, I would just like, even if you're in your room by yourself, it'd be great to not be on mute, because that would just, it's easier for me. And if I can see you guys, like, look, I'm wearing a sweatshirt. It's okay. It's good to see the people that I'm talking to. Okay. So, Abigail and Eliana and Susan. Is that your name?
Susan.
Susan. Nice to meet you. I'm Rabbanit Shira. Hi, Dana. All right. So, let's get started. Did you guys get the sheet?
Yeah.
That I sent? Yeah? You
You
opened
just-
it up?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna start with, I think my son wants to say hello. Yeah, now you can see, okay. We're gonna start with Dayenu, okay? How many Dayenus are there?
14.
Good, you looked at the number. Well, really, that's a trick. It's a trick. Because how many are there really?
15.
15, that's right, because the last one doesn't continue, right? Okay, so there's 15 Dayanus. Now I want you to look at all of the Dayanus.
Growing stuff's in the fridge for like 6 months, Cheryl. Duncan Hines.
What was that? Cheryl? Okay, the Seder.
No, I just said that I put the source sheet in the chat for anybody who may not have gotten it in WhatsApp.
Oh, okay.
In the chat in Zoom.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, okay, now let's look. So we have 15 Dayanus. Out of the 15 Dayanus, how many Dayanus have to do with leaving Mitzrayim?
Are you counting the man and stuff like that as part of leaving Mitzrayim?
No. In other words, actual, like where there was a back and forth with the Egyptians. How many?
7.
7.
Mamon.
Close.
6, 7, yeah.
I would say 8 because ilu shikat sarenu betocho v'lo, like, because ilu shikat sarenu betocho is like the drowning. Oh, but that's below sipek sakenu b'midbar. Okay, I see. It's really 7. Okay, now out of those 7, how many have to do with just good for us versus bad for the Egyptians?
Two.
1.
2 are good?
I say 1.
Wait, but which side are you saying? Good or bad?
Good.
There's 1 that's just about us that doesn't really have to do with them.
Which is?
Ilu karanu et hayam v'lo ha'aviranu b'tocho b'charava.
Okay, so that's right. That's just for us.
And Ilu Mutzianu.
Hotzianu Mitzrayim.
About
Okay,
v'lo asa b'hem shvatim is about them.
right. But Hotzianu Mitzrayim is about us, right? Like each one has 2 parts, right? So the first one is Hotzianu Mitzrayim, and then it's V'lo asa b'hem shvatim, and then there's their V'lo asa ba'el hohem is like that he hurt their God. Lo haragat bechorehem, killed their bechor. Lo natan lanu et mamonam. Well, that is good for us. Like, that is a positive for us as opposed to, like when somebody gives me their money, I'm happy that I got their money. Like, that's a good for me. It's not just like, oh, I'm looking at somebody else and they lost their money. You get what I'm saying? So there's a positive for me as well. Okay, for the Jews as well there. And Karalanu et hayam, splitting the sea and letting us through, right? Okay, so what we've seen there is that out of the 7, 8 that are about our relationship with Mitzrayim, most of them have a really kind of negative atmosphere to them, a negative aspect to them. In other words, it's like, oh, wouldn't have been good enough if you just have kept hurting them, right? Oh, Dayenu, it's enough for us if you also hurt their bechor and also killed their, made them drown in the sea, and it just seems a little possibly overly vengeful. What do you guys think? No thoughts? Yes, Susan?
I'm just thinking about their powerlessness for 400 years and how it's kind of understandable that the focus would be on the power against them in contrast to that powerlessness.
So it's like the powers have switched and now we're happy to see them fall and fall and fall and further fall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm uncomfortable with the happy to see them fall part, surely, but I can understand the power dynamic shift and why it would need to be emphasized, because there were, well, 210 years of the other version of the power dynamic.
Okay, and writing that down in the liturgy that we say every year in the Haggadah, what do we think about that?
Chol dor vador.
Right, we have to remember. Eliana, Abigail, Dana, what do you guys think?
I kind of agree. Like, I think it makes sense that like we're allowed to be a little angry at them, but at the same time we're not being like too like focused on like just getting revenge. Like we like take the blood out, like the wine out of our cup, and like memory of them, and like we're not like hating them. Like they're not like a Amalek. We don't have to like kill them all if we see an Egyptian.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying. We do have that part of the Seder. I want to bring up other parts of the Seder that the Haggadah that we say that are maybe in the same vein. So the most classic is source number 2, Shvo chamatcha el hagoyim asher lo yaducha. So like pour out your wrath. In my family, whenever we like do this part, we're always like, okay, now it is time to pour out our wrath. Like that's like this is the wrath pouring section of the Seder. Right on the goyim that you do not know, that you don't know your malchut. Ki achalet Yaakov et naveu Hashem shapoch aleim za'amcha b'charon atecha yasigen.
This is
very
addressed
like
to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is addressed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is not our wrath.
you're right.
This is
You're right.
Hashem's wrath. And also
so,
in Dayenu too, it was Hashem's nikama. It's not us. We're not being asked to hurt the Egyptians or even hate the Egyptians. We're talking about Hashem doing all those things.
okay. So that is one of, whenever we talk about like the dynamic of, what, 1 second, let me see where that is. Okay, you know what? You have skipped ahead, Susan. So, so I'm going to touch on what you said. What you said is one of the classic answers to one of these questions, and it's like very good. But I want to leave that for a little bit later. I want to build things up a little bit more. Okay. Now, when I was a teenager, a long time ago, I really didn't like this section of Shvo chamatcha. I was like, this is not good, you know. I was very, I don't know, like modern Western political, I guess, like of like, oh, this is not good. How could we're supposed to love people, not hate them? And this is something my bubby was not thrilled with how I was behaving like that. She's like, you don't know the history of the Jewish people. You're like basically a stupid 15-year-old. So like you have to have a much larger history and understanding of what we've been through, like as Susan said, b'chol dor vador, to see why we feel this of Shvo chamatcha. But the truth is, you would think it's like a very modern thing to be sensitive about that. But in source number 3, an addition that was found in a Haggadah from the year 1521, okay? And it's miyuchas, this Haggadah is miyuchas to Rashi's grandson, although it's not clear if it's really his grandson's, but this is what was found. Shvoch ahavatcha al hagoyim asher yaducha. So pour out your love on the nations that know you. Ve'al mamlachot asher b'shimcha korim, and on the kingdoms that call out in your name. Biglal chasadim shehem osim im zera Yaakov, because of the good that they do to the seed of Jacob. Umeginim al amcha Yisrael mipnei ochlehem yizku lerot besukecha bechirecha. Besukot bechirecha. Okay, and they watch over the Jews, and they should be zocha to get like Hashem's sukkah. Okay. When I first read that, I was like, oh my God. Like, I didn't know first that it was from 1521. I was like, oh, that's such leftist craziness. That's from some reform Haggadah or something like that. And then I saw what it's really from. And it's so interesting that I think it's really poignant to see that some of the sensitivities that we have today are not just our sensitivities. When we say to pour, when we ask God to pour out his wrath on other nations, even in the 1500s, they also felt something was a little bit, just a little bit didn't sit right to some people. And that's why this alternate version was created. Okay. Moving on. So that's the classic part of the Haggadah that we see of vengefulness. But there are other parts that I think are a little bit even almost funny. And so if you turn to number 4, Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer, Minayin ata omer shelaku hamitzrim b'mitzrayim 10 makot ve'al hayam laku 50 makot. So what does that mean? Dana, you with me? What does that mean? What is Rabbi Yossi asking? You have to unmute yourself if you're trying to say something.
I'm just reading it.
Okay, so it means, how do we know, right? That in Mitzrayim there were 10 makot, and on the sea there were 50 makot. Now, guys, just from your knowledge, hey, Chana, so good to see you. Just from your knowledge of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, how many makot happened at the sea?
1-ish. He drowned them.
Okay, very good. Not 50. Okay, so he's asking, how do we know if there were 10 in Mitzrayim that there were 50 on the Yam? So continues, B'Mitzrayim mahu omer, vayomur achar tumiyah paro, etzba Elokim hi. In Mitzrayim they said etzba Elokim. How many etzbas is etzba? 1. Very good. Okay, good. We're all good at math here. Okay, so I lost the place. Okay, etzba Elokim v'alayam mahu omer vayar Yisrael et hayad hagdola asher asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim. Yad is 5, right? So now, 1 etzba equals how many makot? 10 makot, right? Then 5 etzbas equal how many makot? 50. Very good. Okay, so that's how we know that there were 50. Easy math. Vayar ha'am et Hashem vayiminu b'Hashem Moshe avdo. Kama laku ba'etzba 10 makot. Emor me'ata b'Mitzrayim laku 10 makot ve'alayam laku 50 makot. Okay, so that's a beautiful drush about, building it up. But it doesn't end there. It goes into even up to 250 makot, okay? Now, the reason I say this is like even a little bit funny is because 10 makot aren't enough. We can't just like sit with the actual story of splitting the sea and of frogs and blood and killing the firstborn. Like, that's not crazy enough. We need to expand it to 50 and 250. Like, what is this about? Why do the rabbis feel like such a push to expand the pain that the Egyptians went through? Okay, so that's the question on the Haggadah. And then, as some of you brought up, obviously, it's not just in the Haggadah where we see this type of thing. We also see it, right, with Amalek. And that's like the classic question. Wait a second. How can we go about killing Amalek, right? If you look at the psukim, it's actually really, really like classic vengeance. Zachor asher asa lecha Amalek b'derech b'tzeitchem b'Mitzrayim, asher karcha b'derech vayiznav b'cha kol hanechshalim acharecha v'ata ayef v'yageh v'lo yarei Elohim. So remember what Amalek did to you, that they came up behind you and tried to attack the tired and the weak among you. והיה בהניח השם אלוקיך לך מכל אויביך מסביב בארץ אשר השם אלוקיך נתן לך, נחלה לרשתה, תמחה את זכר עמלק מתחת השמיים, לא תשכח. And so when you get to Israel and you get to rest in Israel, then you need to destroy the memory of Amalek. So Amalek did this, therefore you do that, right? It's a very, quid pro quo, right? Like Amalek did this, and therefore punish them and kill them for eternity, basically. And of course, many Parshanim have dealt with this. Not just in this generation, in all generations, from the Gemara, from the Mishnah, right? This is something that has caused people problems basically since the Bible was written, right? In terms of like how it doesn't sit so well with our basic values, right? Finally, for the Tanakh, we have in Tehillim. You know Al Narot Babel? Say yes if you know.
It's very graphic.
It's very graphic. The part that we don't sing in camp at the end is Chet and Tet. Bat Babel Ashduda, Ashrei Sheyishalem Lechat Mucha Shegamalta Lanu, Ashrei Sheyochaz V'nipetet Olalayich El Hasela. So basically, praise be who gives you back like what you gave us, like who repays you for what you did to us. Praise be who takes your babies and smashes them on the rocks. That's why we don't sing those verses, okay? It doesn't give you a good, nice, warm feeling inside. But they're there, and so we have to leave moderita. Likewise, another thing, I don't know if you guys thought about this year, but it's something that does come up a lot with Megillat Esther. At the end of Megillat Esther, after everything's been solved, and Achashverosh is like, okay, you killed a lot of people, and you hung Haman's sons, and is there anything else I can give you? Anything. And you know what Esther asks for? She asks, V'tomar Esther, im al hamelech tov, if the king is good, yineten gam machar laYehudim asher b'Shushan lasot kedat hayom v'et aseret bnei Haman yitlu al etz. You know what I really want? Like, if I had to ask for anything, I would ask that tomorrow we continue to kill. And you know what? Those 10 sons that we killed already, can we hang them so that everybody can see? So that also is like the Purim story is a nice, beautiful story about things being turned on its head, but some people really look at that ending and are like, wait a second, isn't that a bit much? Like, okay, kill your enemies, protect yourself, but ad matai, like how much? And then finally, what we bring, actually, I'm just going to skip that source. In Avarachim, we also say like vengeful things. Okay, let's look at the other side of the picture. But before we look at the other side of the picture, does anybody have any questions or comments? Go like this if you don't have questions or comments. Okay. It's very hard to communicate on this thing. All right. So
could the other thing have been something other than vengeance? Could she just have been afraid of straggler attackers, and that they weren't really allowed to fight back unless they had a particular edict to do so?
That like the edict would go and then they wouldn't be able to continue fighting.
I mean, I'm not sure it's vengeance. And even the displaying of Haman's sons, which feels really vengeful and everything,
is like look and see, don't mess with the Jews.
Either that or, I mean, I actually asked this question at our Seudah this year, which was the last time we were together with anybody. And the answer that somebody gave was that was a tikkun from the sin of Agag, of Shaul with Agag, proving that all the offspring are gone.
Like to continue to kill them the next day?
No, that they're dead already. And just showing everybody, look, not only is Haman dead, but all of his offspring are dead too. It's good. We're fine now.
Interesting. So it's not for the non-Jews look and see, it's stuff for the Jews. Interesting. I never thought about that.
That was a nice answer that somebody gave me. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. So now I want to look at the other side of the story. Okay. So here we've been seeing all sorts of examples of I'm going to call it vengefulness because that's the word I'm going to call it right now. But right, that lichora, vengeful, is a good thing. It's something that we have in our liturgy. It's something that we talk about over the Haggadah and on Purim and with Amalek and with so many different things. Okay, but on the other hand, who is it that mentioned that in number 9, right? That we take the wine, right? We with our pinkies. You know what I'm talking about? Right? So that we won't have full joy, right? We take off a little bit of wine. And that's like one thing when I was in high school, I remember like, because this whole thing was very hard for me, I would like take extra. I would like use, instead of my pinky finger, I would use my pointer finger, like, all right, I'm such a feeling person. I'm taking it with my, more wine. But okay, so that is something, but that's like a symbolic thing, basically showing that we do care and that we are, even we're not upset, but that we don't like to see God's creations being punished, and that's not necessarily like a good thing. And then in number 10, the classic lo tikom v'lo titor. Okay, so how can we be asking to do all this vengeance, right? When, hello, Elisa, good to see your face. So how can we be asking to do all this vengeance stuff? If it says in the Torah itself, don't be vengeful, right? Do not bear a grudge and do not take revenge.
Isn't that just by Jews?
Good answer. So classically, so then we put up this question, right? What are the possible answers? Since then, number 1 is maybe we only have to be good to Jews. Maybe we only have to be not vengeful to Jews, right? But to non-Jews, cool. How do you guys feel about that answer? Terrible. I can't hear who's saying what. Does Hadassah feel terrible?
I just don't like that. I think it's like preferring.
What?
Yeah. I just like don't like the feeling of it. Yeah. It just makes you feel bad. I don't like it.
Right. Okay. So I definitely think it's a nice answer because it answers the question. It's like, okay, like in the Gemara, right? So we're like, this Mishnah is talking about this and this Mishnah is talking about that. We've answered our question, but it doesn't give us a nice gushy feeling inside of like, we love people. No. So another answer, now I'm trying to remember. Susan, what was it you said before that I said we were going to come back to?
I said that it was not our own vengeance that was being described, but rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu's vengeance.
Right. That it's not very good. So that it's not, what's it called? It's not us who's supposed to be vengeful, right? God is telling you, don't be vengeful. Me, I can do it all I want, right? And so when we are asking God, right, like pour out your wrath, right? Saying people have been bad to us. They've been bad to us for many, many generations. And so we're saying, and in every generation, we basically have somebody being bad to us. So pour out your wrath. We can't do it though. And so that also answers the question. How do you guys feel about that one? I'm not sure what that means. Silent laughter. Okay. Eliana, what does that mean? Say out loud what that means.
Like I don't think it's perfect, but like it's kind of like you could say that, like, okay. I think God.
Okay, that kind of works, but you don't love it.
Right, like you could always say like God knows everything, God can do whatever God wants. But it like you kind of already had that answer. Like it doesn't seem like, I feel like that's an answer you could have just like thought up from the beginning, and then it's like not, I feel like it's like if you had that answer, it was like never a problem, which seems like it would make a good, does that make any sense?
Saying like, if that was the answer, this would be a bad shear.
Like lo tzricha.
Like
A little bit, yeah.
Like, okay, so I'll try not to disappoint you. I think that one of the issues that I personally have with this answer is that it's like, so God's telling us not to do something. He's telling us like, vengeance is kind of like a midah, right? It's like when you want to take revenge on somebody, that's not just a bad action if you do, right? It's lo tikom v'lo titor. Don't bear a grudge, because bearing a grudge is basically what leads to vengeance, right? And so it's a midah. It's like who you are, like having anger or something like that. So yes, sometimes we say God gets angry, but it's not like, we don't say, God, be angry. Please, God, be angry now. Like, it's not, we don't say that. And even like in Tehillim, right, we say, El Nekamot Hashem. God is a God of vengeance, right? Like, it's something we use to describe God. And therefore, it seems weird for vengeance to be kind of like good for God and bad for us. It just seems like if we're talking about a midah here, it would seem that either it's bad or it's good. Does that make sense to you guys?
Normally we're asked to emulate Hashem's midot, right? Kashem shehu,
right?
And after osim chesed or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So here it's like, okay, we're not this, but except for this, right? Do as I say, not as I do. Which I've been saying a lot to my kids lately. Okay, so what was I saying? Okay, so let's look a little further into lo tikom v'lo titor. Rashi gives a very good example of what lo tikom and lo titor is. Okay, he says, Amarlo, we're in number 11, okay? Amarlo, hashileni magalech. Amarlo, love. Limachar amarlo, hashileni kardomech. Amarlo, eini mashilcha, kederach shelo hishaltani. Okay, so what's revenge? Revenge is, let's bring this into our day and age. Abigail, can I borrow your telephone? Can I?
Sure.
Okay.
Wrong answer.
So now I've borrowed it, okay? And no. Sorry, you're supposed to say no. Can I borrow your telephone?
No.
No. Okay. Now the next day, you come to me and you say, Rabbanit Shira, can I borrow? What would you like to borrow from me, Abigail?
A mug.
A mug. Okay. So what's my answer going to be? I'm going to say, listen, sorry, hun. Yesterday I needed your help, and did you give it to me? No. So today I'm not going to give it to you. That is revenge. That is the lo tikon. And lo titor is, I asked Abigail for her phone, and she says no. And then the next day, Abigail asks me for my mug, and I say, I will give you my mug. But that's because I'm a good person, even though you didn't give me your cell phone yesterday. Okay, so that's like the bearing of the grudge. Now, what does this make you feel, this whole interaction? It's very katnuni. How do you say katnuni in English?
Puerile?
Sorry?
Puerile, like a childish?
Petty.
Yeah, like it's dealing with,
Petty.
yeah, it's petty. It's very petty, right? Like, you give me this, I give you that. No, right? So I'm thinking that when we say God is a vengeful God, that we're not talking about this. We're not talking about petty vengeance of like, you didn't do for me, therefore I'm not going to do for you. And therefore, I think when it says bnei amecha, what are we talking about? You don't do that from nation to nation. You do that with your neighbors. That is the type of, interaction that you have with the people around you. And in the Torah's version of that, there's no real reason why non-Jews should be around you, right? So at Bnei Amecha, the people who are around you, right? Who are you going to have an argument about who took whose axe last week, right? Only with your neighbors. And therefore, that's the idea of at Bnei Amecha. But when we're talking about national issues, of national pride, and of anti-Semitism, and of, things like that, then we're talking about a very different story than the petty lo tikon v'lo titor that Rashi is talking about. And here, I want to go back to, before we go back to, let's read number 13 together, okay? This is a quote from Daniel Pipes, who was part of the Middle East Forum, and he was talking about how to win a war, okay? And he says, wars end not through goodwill, but through victory. Let your great object in war be victory, observed Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese strategist. War is an act of violence to compel the enemy to fulfill our will, wrote his 19th century Prussian successor, Karl von Clausewitz, in 1832. Douglas MacArthur observed in 1951 that in war, there is no substitute for victory. Technological advancement has not altered this insight. Fighting either continues or potentially can resume, so long as both sides hope to achieve their goals. Victory consists of imposing one's will on the enemy, compelling him to give up his war ambitions. Wars typically end when one side gives up hope, when its will to fight has been crushed. So when do we win wars? We win wars by totally crushing the oppressor, right? The enemy. And how do you totally crush an enemy? Let's go back to Dayenu. Okay, go back to the beginning. We totally crush the enemy by first hurting them, right? The makot. Asabahem shvatim, right? He hurt them. Now, when you're hurting, who do you look to try and save you?
Your gods.
Your gods. Or, I mean, we look to one God, but, right? People look to their gods. Say, please, God, save me, right? So what's our next one? Right? But so then he hurts the gods. Now, when all else fails, when you are hurting, and when the gods are not answering, where do we have hope? Who do we look to for hope for the future?
Our children.
Our children, right? Haragat bechorehem. Who's like the pinnacle of our children, right? The one we care about the most, the future, right? The Bechor is the one who's supposed to take care of the future. And then God goes and basically kills every single one of their Bechor, right? But what happened? They just kept running after us. Even then, we left Mitzrayim, right? They kicked us out. And what happened? The war was still going on. How is the war still going on? Because they followed us, right? And so the final thing, what made it so that we would never have to deal with Mitzrayim again? We would never have to deal with Mitzrayim again after Yam Suf, after Kriyat Yam Suf, and they all drown in Yam Suf. This is not enough to say that we crossed through the Yam Suf. We have to also say that they drowned, because once they drowned, that's it. That's it for Mitzrayim. In ancient Egypt, we don't hear about ancient Egypt again. The next time we hear about Egypt in the Tanakh, it's a different story, right? And therefore, Dayenu is about full Geula, okay? It's about the only time in our history, basically, that we have completely, had basically a complete Geula. And therefore, everything in Dayenu, notice, by the way, that everything in Dayenu is all complete Geula. We don't talk about the Mishkan. Why don't we talk about the Mishkan? That was huge. That was huge that happened in the desert. We don't talk about the Mishkan because it was transitory. We weren't going to keep the Mishkan forever, right? We also don't talk about the wars with Amalek. We don't talk about the wars with, Har Sinai, with Sichon and Og, right? We don't, or with the Midianim, right? Those wars we don't talk about. Why? Because Amalek comes back afterwards. we're still stuck with Amalek, right? We're still dealing with Amalek. And we're still dealing with those enemies. Therefore, even though we did win the war with Amalek, and it was a miracle, right? And we did win the war with Midian, and it was a miracle. Like, God helped us through that, right? But it wasn't a miracle that was worth putting down in Dayenu, because Dayenu is about full victory. And that's why there are 15 Dayenus. Do you know what 15 represents? Of course you don't, because it's really random. If 15 represents the steps up to the Beit HaMikdash, there were 15 steps from the Azarah, basically, to the Azarah. And that's pretty cool, isn't it? Okay, so here, what we're talking about in Dayenu is only the full, what's it called? The full winning of the war. And that is why, Susan noted, when it came to Purim, right? Why does Esther want to hang Haman's sons, and why does she want to continue fighting? She wants to continue fighting because the war is not done. The war is not done until every single person who wants to kill you is dead, or doesn't want to kill you anymore. That's when the war is done, and that's when you can rest. So vengeance really here is not the vengeance that we think of. It's not a pettiness. It's not a, I want him to suffer. We obviously don't want them to suffer. We take a little bit of wine out, right? And we don't say a full Hallel for all of Pesach, right? Do you know why we only say full Hallel on one day of Pesach or 2 days in Chutz La'aretz?
Because the
What
Mitzrayim,
happens on the last day of Pesach?
the Mitzrayim drowned.
The Mitzrayim drowned. And then God says, right, you're not going to say Shira and while my people are drowning, while my creations are drowning, right? It wouldn't be appropriate to say a full Hallel on the last day of Pesach. And then the last day is a Yom Tov. Therefore, if we're not going to say full Hallel on the Yom Tov, then we're also not going to say full Hallel on Chol HaMoed. Therefore, we only say full Hallel on the first day of Pesach. That's kind of crazy, right? But why do we do that? To show, like, we don't have a feeling of, we don't have the vengeance, the revenge that we're used to using it like that. But Nekama, right, El Nekamot Hashem, is actually a good midah. It is a midah that we should take upon ourselves to have self-preservation, basically, to hurt our enemies until they no longer exist, until we have menuchat nefesh, until we can know that our enemies are not there anymore. That's what we ask God for, and that's how we ourselves are supposed to behave. That's how Esther behaved. That's what we're saying basically in Tehillim, and that's basically throughout the Haggadah. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Your
you.
voice went away.
Thank you.
We can't
Thank
hear you
you.
anymore. Thank you.
Still